does sum it up. Richard, good to hear your voice. Thank you. Good to hear from you again. We'll talk again 7:25 to other matters. And irrespective of your political leanings, you could probably, if you managed to save a few quid through the pandemic, do with a holiday. Well, the ban on foreign holidays is on track to be lifted on May 17th. This isn't industry experts or whatever, this is Downing Street saying last night. But travel opened up to potentially as many as 30 countries. COVID laws mean anyone caught taking a foreign holiday before the end of June currently faces a £5,000 fine. But Downing Street saying ministers are now confident the ban will be lifted on the May the 17th, the most optimistic date yet set during the rollout of the roadmap, or what you and I would call a plan. Let's bring into the conversation Julia Lowe Bosaid, who's CEO at Advantage Travel Partnership. Now, that's the nation's largest independent travel agent and travel management company. What do you hope you hear in a couple of weeks' time? Good morning to you.
Good morning, Nick. Good morning. Well, we're hoping that we will continue hearing some positive sentiment coming from government. We know from the Transport Select Committee report that was published yesterday, the government are being held to account to publish the list because we have the framework, but we have no actual clarity and definition of how that framework is going to really work, and which countries, most importantly, which countries are going to populate those lists.
You've almost answered my next question, Julia. When you and your colleagues are asked by potential customers, where do you think it'll be safe to go? What do you and your colleagues say?
Well, I have to be very honest with you. In the position that we're in, and we have many travel agents, human travel agents that are desperate to help their customers. We're not speculating, because right now the last thing we need is to be raising hopes for consumers who have bookings that are booked, but also looking to visit friends and families, and those countries don't end up being on that list. So we're making sure that everybody understands that there are likely to be changes, particularly if you're travelling very close to the 17th of May. And that's a very anxious place to be right now, because the clarity isn't there. So we're being very cautious, our members being very cautious in their advice, but making sure they know, the customers know, when they are thinking of booking, who they should be booking with.
Lastly, and briefly if you can, Julia, when do you think it might be business as normal in your trade?
We're a long way off from that, but every day we're getting much closer, so we're staying optimistic and hopeful.
Thanks for your time, Julia. Have yourself a good weekend. Julia Lowe Bosaid is CEO at Advantage Travel Partnership. 7:28. He tried to join the Merchant Navy at 15 but was rejected. Instead, he hung around at a local recording studio, simply making cups of tea for the technicians and asking loads of questions. He went on to join a band. It's the Bay City Rollers.
For me, yeah, I really enjoyed myself.
Did Rollermania make you rich man?
Yeah, I can't rich.
Was he a happy bloke? Good morning.
I'm laughing at that, and it was the silk sheets comments. He was a very cynical bloke, a very untrusting bloke when I met him back in 2015 when I was charged with putting the comeback tour together. He was very wary of management of anybody in the industry because he'd set up a wee career and a life without them due to the toxic behaviour of Tam Payton and the industry letting them down. So he was a bitter man, but there was that. He did have a great sense of humour underneath it all, and that would come through occasionally. With me, I was one of these industry people. So we sort of clashed heads almost every day. 4 in the morning, 5 in the morning, I would be getting mad calls. But the sex, drugs, he'd ditched by then. I don't know about the band suspension. He needed a tour bus the length of Hyde Park, the size of the women that were trying to get him at that point, you know.
Some of the numbers are incredible. In total, Donald, they sold over 100 million records. This was a powerful, powerful band.
Well, this is what I've been saying to a lot of people. They were huge. Roller Mania was a very real phenomenon. I mean, they broke across coast to coast, right across America, North Canada, Australia, Japan. As you say, they sold over 100 million records. They were the boys. You said Boyzone, the One Direction of their day. They were bigger than them. I doubt very much that One Direction will come back 40 years later and do a comeback tour. I hope they would. Because I promoted them as well.
You're standing by and ready. So let me ask you, on a sad day, did you know he'd been ill?
No, in fact, it was John, the former manager there, that called me and said, Les has passed away, and he'd ditched the booze, he'd been healthy, he'd been playing tennis again.
Really?
But yeah, it was up and down. It was up and down. They have a story second to none in the world of rock and roll and pop, and they really do. There's so many highs and so many lows,
And it's time to say goodbye. Donald, thanks. Great speaking with you. You've watched the highs and the lows, and you've helped them on the way. Donald McLeod, who was agent of Les McHugh and helped organise those comeback tours. We'll come back to our conversation concerning the so-called chatty rat at 7:32. You're listening to Breakfast with me, Nick Ferrari, here on LBC News Time. Thomas Watts.
Coronavirus red list restrictions have come into force on passengers arriving in the UK from India. British residents returning from the country now have to spend 10 days in hotel quarantine with a travel ban for everyone else. The Cabinet Office has started an internal investigation into the leak of Boris Johnson's text messages with Sir James Dyson. Downing Street sources have reportedly suggested the Prime Minister's former aide, Dominic Cummings, is responsible. Dozens of former sub-postmasters convicted of stealing money could have their names cleared at the Court of Appeal later. They were found guilty of theft, fraud and false accounting following the introduction of a flawed post office IT system. Warm and sunny for most places today, cloudier in the far north of Scotland and windy in the far southwest, a high of 18 Celsius.
Eddie Mayer on LBC. Gusto had in his sights texts from the Conservative supporting businessman Sir James Dyson and Boris Johnson. Labour says Boris Johnson is guilty of fixing tax rates for his mates. Boris Johnson says he was doing everything he could to source life-saving ventilators at the outbreak of a pandemic. You tell me who's right. Eddie Mayer. This afternoon from 4. Listen on Global Player. LBC. Home working. We've set a kitchen tables, dining tables, even dressing tables. So make home working work for you with a new CCM Smart Desk. It'll raise and lower into any sitting or standing position you prefer to work from, all at the touch of a button. It's even got built-in USB and wireless smartphone charge points. Pre-order with £100 off for just £329, including free delivery from mysmartdesk.co.uk.
For many of us, future plans don't come much bigger than moving home. That's why at the Halifax, we want to make sure nothing gets in your way. So if you're unable to visit us in branch for a mortgage appointment face-to-face, we're more than happy to come to you. Every week, our colleagues are doing over 3,000 mortgage appointments by phone and video call, so we can keep your moving plans moving along. Halifax, it's a people thing.
There's big, there's huge, and then there's Car Giants! Freedom, reopening sale now on Car Giants. of them motoring. Drivers and riders, watch out for our fellow travellers on life's road. It's hard to know what's going to happen, unless you're telepathic. Mr. Hatchback's making a right turn. But has he seen that moped? Oh, he has. Nice. Moped's not taking any chances. He's slowing down. Cool like a cucumber. Drivers and riders, let's watch out for each other. To the Mayor of London and TfL, every journey matters.
We all look forward to long summer days, unless we suffer from hay fever. Don't let hay fever spoil your summer. Get a head start by taking part in a clinical trial exploring long-term hay fever protection. If you're aged between 18 and 65 and have a grass pollen allergy and are able to get to our site at London's Royal Brompton Hospital, you may be eligible to participate in this important study. You'll be compensated for your time and receive travel expenses. That's not to be sneezed at. To see if you're eligible, visit hayfeverstudy.org.uk today. The study is funded by the National Institutes of Health in the USA, approved by an independent research ethics committee.
Jump out of that loungewear, update your wardrobe, and treat yourself to a haircut. It's time to see loved ones. With places now opening, are you prepared? Get ready now with an approved used car from Volvo, because this weekend is the Volvo Select event with 0% APR finance on an approved used car and 2 services for just £199. Our showroom doors are now open for you to visit in person. Just book online for a real or virtual appointment. We can help either way. Visit volvocars.co.uk.
Used vehicles up to 4 years on participating retailers. 50% deposit on minimum £7,000. Conditional sale terms, eligibility guarantee requirements and conditions apply. Volvo Car Financial Services. Service offer subject to servicing schedule. T's and C's apply.
Nick Ferrari at breakfast on LBC. Call 0345 6060973.
7:38, running a little bit behind the clock because of that extended interview about the sad death of the frontman of the Bay City Rollers. So possibly any time for 2 rapid financial headlines about David Muir from Aquis Exchange, and one that's broken within the last 20-30 minutes or so. Tell the listeners, morning David, tell the listeners about government borrowing.
Top of the morning to you. Eye-watering stuff, this Nick. Wow. The government bodies borrowed an estimated 941.7 billion for day-to-day activities in the full year to 2021. That's 203.2 billion more than in the previous year. I mean, this is pretty grown-up stuff. Public sector borrowing is estimated to have been 28 billion in March, just the 1 month that's just gone. That's 21 billion more than in 2020. Just to put the thing in perspective, these figures are the largest I think we've probably ever seen. Total government net cash requirement, excluding UK asset resolution and Network Rail, was 20.8 billion, as I said. That makes a total of £334.5 billion, which is 97.7% of gross GDP.
All of which has to be paid back. We'll bring us to our conversation about the loan charge in just a few minutes, but that will be the other